You've heard the phrase, timing is everything, and for most of us, we base that timing on intuition and guesswork. But best-selling author Daniel Pink has just released a new book called When: The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing, and we're going to take a look at it. First, I want to tell you that I read this short but incredible book over the last few weeks. I highlighted something like 117 quotes, and even that feels like I didn't do it justice. It's an incredible book that I highly recommend you read for yourself. This is just an overview of it, but this isn't going to do it justice. You can buy it in the link that's in the description just below. There is one quote in the book that summarizes the whole thing for me, and it's this: "We simply don't take issues of when as seriously as we take questions of what." We simply don't take issues of when as seriously as we take questions of what. Pink starts his book by explaining that we all experience the day in 3 stages: peak, trough, rebound. So our alertness and energy levels increase in the morning, they decline at around noon, and then they ascend again towards the end of the day. About 75% of us experience the peak, trough, and rebound in that order, and we'll get to the other 25% in a little bit. For this 75%, research shows that analytical tasks should happen during that peak, during that morning phase, and that during that trough, that's when we should work on creative analytical tasks, which Pink refers to as the inspiration paradox. Basically, where we are most innovative and creative when we're not at our best. So what about the other 25%? Pink refers to people as being in 3 different types. He calls them larks, owls, and third birds. Larks are early risers, owls, as you can imagine, are late starters, and third birds are kind of somewhere in the middle. And he describes that 75% as being comprised almost solely of larks and third birds. Owls make up that extra 25%. So this can be due to genes, or it can also be due to age. For example, adolescents are often owls, as you probably know, and older generations are more larky in nature. So whereas larks and third birds typically experience their day as a peak, a trough, and a rebound, owls are slightly different. Theirs is more like recovery, trough, peak. To summarize, we all experience something like a peak, a trough, and a rebound, and that trough is the most perilous time of the day. Pink even goes through some research that suggests that you should never get an appointment at the hospital during that trough period, so particularly just in the afternoon hours, which is crazy. And there's a few other stories. Again, I recommend that you read this book. But how can we combat those troughs? Well, the author gives us some suggestions for that too. He says that we need to take breaks, that breaks are vital, that we should be out in nature, that we should be away from our desks, that we should maybe even go for a walk for 5 minutes out of every hour, that we should be social. In fact, Pink writes this: "If you're looking for the platonic ideal of a restorative break, the perfect combination of scarf, hat and gloves to insulate yourselves from the cold breath of the afternoon, consider a short walk outside with a friend during which you discuss something other than work." I'm someone who loves to skip lunch so I can go crazy and eat more in the evening, and it turns out that that's a really stupid idea. Lunch is actually the most important meal of the day, and it helps us combat those troughs that we experience. And the most important thing is not at your desk. But wait, there's more. If you're anything like me, you love a good nap, and research shows it's actually super valuable. Listen to this quote: "Done right, naps can be a shrewd response to the trough and a valuable break. Naps, research shows, confer 2 key benefits. They improve cognitive performance and they boost mental and physical health." That's the good news. The bad news is that to combat something called sleep inertia, when we wake up feeling really groggy and gross, we should only take naps that are between 10 and 20 minutes. It seems tough, but I've been trying it for the last few weeks and it's awesome. What we should do, according to the author, is set our alarm for 25 minutes, as the average person takes about 7 minutes to fall asleep. And then we get our good nap and we're ready to go for the rest of the day. So Pink begins his book talking about peaks, troughs and recoveries and what we can do to combat that. And over the course of the rest of his book, he talks about beginnings, midpoints and endings. It turns out that beginnings are much more important than we realize. For example, lots of research that Pink cites suggests that the school start time for adolescent and college age students, the owls, should be later. One study even suggests that the start time should be as late as 11 a.m. for optimal performance with those students. But the average start time in the US at present is just 8:03. And that can have an impact on grades, it can have an impact on performance. It's a really interesting stat. We don't know why it is that we start so early. Maybe it's because of the larkier, older teachers and people who have to get on with their lives in business and other areas. Just don't know. But the research is interesting. There's this incredible quote: "Shifting our focus and giving when the same weight as what won't cure all our ills, but it's a good beginning." And then midpoints. Our lives are described as being like a series of episodes with beginnings, middles and ends. And those middles are also fairly important. They can cause a slump where we lose interest and we get tired. You know what it's like in the middle of something where it feels like the end is nowhere to be seen and you're just struggling along. But they can also cause sparks where we become more motivated and propelled forward. Our lives follow a general slump, for example, in the late 30s and early 40s, and we were actually statistically at our slumpiest in our 50s at 52.9 years. But then we rise up again later on in life to get to a point where we were actually happier than we were before. However, being slightly behind at that midpoint can actually be a motivating factor. Pink tells this story of a basketball team in, I think it's the 80s, in the college basketball arena, where a team is behind by 1 point and then they go on to win. And actually, that statistically, that's true. Most teams, if they're behind by something like 7 points or more, I forget exactly what it was, they are statistically going to lose if that's where they're at half time. But if at halftime they're behind by 1 point, they're statistically more likely to win the game, which is really interesting. So there's 3 ways to turn a slump into a spark. He says, be aware of those midpoints. Apparently just being aware that you're in those slumps can help you get out of it. Use them as wake-up calls, so use them to knock yourself back into action and to push on towards your goal. And then the third thing he says is to imagine you're behind like those basketball players, but only by a little bit. Well, apparently when we feel like we are just a little behind, enough behind that we can catch up, it really propels us into action and it propels us to move forward. And finally, fittingly, Pink talks about endings. He talks particularly about 9 enders, so people who are 29, 39, 49, etc. Apparently there is a disproportionate number of 9 enders who take on things like first time marathons and things like that. Apparently we see the end of a period of life and we want to make sure that we are achieving. So definitely a food for thought. Another quote here: at the beginning of a pursuit, we're generally more motivated by how far we've progressed. At the end, we're generally more energized by trying to close the small gap that remains. I know that's true for me, but I wonder if that's true for you as well. It definitely resonates. It's also interesting that in that age-old debate of do you want the good news or the bad news first, there is a fairly definitive answer based on research, and that's that you should always give the good news last. Given a choice, human beings prefer endings that elevate. And that's what Pink writes in his book. And then he applies this research on endings to tell whether or not we should leave our job. And I really loved the questions that he asked to help you know whether you should stay or leave your job. So I wonder if these are helpful for you. Is your current job both demanding and in your control? Does your boss allow you to do your best work? Are you outside the 3 to 5 year salary bump window? And does your daily work align with your long-term goals? Those are some fantastic questions, and to be honest, some fantastic insights in this book, and I thoroughly recommend that you read it. I hope this is helpful to give you a bite-sized chunk of what the book's talking about. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment below. I would love it if you could subscribe for more videos on things like this, leadership, music theory, graphic design, and general other stuff. I want this to be a place where I get to learn and share what I'm learning with you. So, thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.